I'm going to go ahead, start the recording as well. It's already recorded, so what did I do wrong? Okay, it's recording. All right, so good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the NSA Ad Hoc Committee. Let me see. I know we have somebody in the attendee slot. Hadia is attending. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and call the names. I'm Commissioner Brenda Harbin Forte, the chair of the ad hoc. We have Commission Chair Dr. Tafari Malele, who is a member of the ad hoc. We have Chief Reginald Lyles on. We have Mariana Contreras on. We have Jose Dorado on. We have Deputy Chief Clifford Wong on. We have Dr. Jacqueline Thompson on. Our Pastor Jackie. We have Nikki Den on, and we have Commission Counsel Tweet Nguyen on. So welcome. And one of the things that we're going to do basically is I want to get some information. You know, our purpose remains to try to figure out what we're going to do to get the commission to and through the sustainability period, and make sure there is compliance with the outstanding NSA task. As you all know as well, there were various policies that the police department was going to be revising, and I'm going to have Deputy Chief Wong give us a report on the policies that they're working on and that have been completed and that are almost ready for prime time. And I think, Deputy Chief, you had mentioned at the last Police Commission meeting that you that you were going to be presenting some policies to the Police Commission sort of in phases, a few at a time. So, and as I think all of you know, unfortunately, Thursday's Police Commission meeting had to be canceled because there was not going to be a quorum, and the meeting was canceled rather than have all members of the public show up and be a little bit disappointed when we took roll and found out there was no quorum. And then the only thing we're allowed to do when there's no quorum is to adjourn the meeting. No business can be taken care of at a Police Commission meeting in the absence of a 5-person quorum. So what I want to do is, first off, before we hear from Deputy Chief Wong, I'm going to find out if any of you have any issues, questions, or concerns beforehand, and then I'll hear from the chief, from the chair, from Chair Malele, to see if there's anything that she wants to say before we get into an understanding. I'll also ask council if there's anything council needs to report. And so why don't we, any questions, thoughts, comments, or anything from anyone regarding our ad hoc? Go ahead, Mr. Mariano.
I have a comment and a question. I know that in the MOU that was in the memorandum that was sent out by this ad hoc, it stated that the commission and this ad hoc would be looking at not only 5 and 45, but some of the other, or maybe all of the other tasks, that would be a responsibility. And I took that as, I accepted that because I think that maybe this ad hoc should be looking at task 34. That's the vehicle stops, the field investigations and detentions. As you know, that when CIPRA gives their report, or when IED or when OPD gives their report to the commission, there's always a high number of complaints that are not sustained. And these complaints, refer to either race-based or racial profiling or vehicle stops. And I thought that, maybe we can take this really good opportunity to look at the metrics of how that's determined. So I just want to put that out, and see if people agree with that or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mariano. And I think I'll let the chair give a further response. But right now, I think what we're going to be concentrating on is trying to get through the September meeting and make sure everything's in place there. The ad hoc to address the compliance with all of the tasks can continue and will continue. And plus the IG is responsible for ensuring compliance with the NSA. So, but that, and I'll let Chair Malele add to that. But I thought that this one was just going to be trying to make sure we can get to and through the September hearing, and the court did not expand oversight basically to include task 34 is my understanding. But Chair Malele, anything from you?
I don't really have anything to add. I would need to just double check to see which, I know the tasks were reduced, but actually maybe Wong knows, is 34 one of the ones that's still under monitoring?
No, he reduced it to task 2, 5, 25, 24, and 45. So basically use of force, ID, and discipline disparity.
So that task could possibly fall under the racial profiling committee. Or we can, explore it.
Yeah. And I think Jim Channon tried to get the judge to add task 34. I know that he was trying to get the judge to add one, and the judge declined to do that.
Yeah, if I may just add, to be in compliance means a task has become part of OPD's daily practice. And to me, if there's a tremendous amount of complaints coming in, but they're not being sustained, that's not a daily practice. That's all I'm saying.
All right. I don't think they're just agreement, Mariano. It really is more of what is the task of this ad hoc and what belongs in somebody else's roundhouse, wheelhouse, or whatever it's called. And certainly the IG is to monitor compliance with all of the NSA tasks, as well as any that may fall under other ad hocs. But as the chair mentioned, that may be something that the racial profiling committee, perhaps ad hoc, can be looking into and getting information on that. And once we're beyond September and hopefully out from under monitoring, I think the chair is going to expand the NSA compliance, and we still talked about perhaps having a standing committee, trying to go to the city council to get approval and funding for a standing committee, NSA Ad Hoc Standing Committee that can address a broader range of topics. Chief Lyles, you're up.
Yeah, I did read that. I was a little disappointed also because the random stops, the sheer number of the stops that are made by Oakland Police Department on African Americans, right, where there is no probable cause, right, or reasonable suspicion for the stop, but they made them anyway, and no citations were given, no arrests were made. Well, why did you make the stop? Right. Nobody can come up with a reasonable answer. All right. And then for Judge Orrick to think that's not important, that was very, very disappointing. I'm glad that Jim Channon, I read where he challenged that and asked for it. But I want to go on record and challenge the Oakland Police Department and its leadership. if you want us to believe that you can manage and discipline yourself, this is what you handle. You don't need the judge. You don't need the monitor. You don't need the consent decree. You got the law. You got your oath of office. So if I'm the chief of police, I would say, well, listen, if we want to earn the respect and the trust of this community, let's do something about this. Because it left a bad taste in my mouth. Okay, because Judge Ulrich said, okay, the monitor doesn't have to keep this under his purview. We're not going to drop that, are we?
No.
We do know it's a problem.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to get across is this is not obvious to everybody. It's not a big deal. And I'm talking about people who've taken the oath of office as police officers. They think that this is good policing.
If I can clarify, there is nobody on this call that thinks, I don't think, that the issue is not an important one and that the issue is not to be addressed. The only question is when and where. The police commission can take this up on its own at a police commission meeting and gather information and do what it needs to do. So it's not like either this ad hoc addresses it or it doesn't get addressed at all. It will get addressed. This ad hoc is for a specific purpose, and that is the outstanding tasks. 34 isn't one of them in terms of any enumerated outstanding tasks, but it is, of course, an important issue for the police commission, for the citizens. So the question is not, it's not a question of either or, either we do it or nobody does it at all. It will be done, it will be addressed, it will be handled. And it's just a question of, is that for another ad hoc committee? Is that just for us? Is that for the police commission as a whole? Is that for the IG to do investigations and audits and everything and make recommendations? There are others who can and will address it. And so
Well,
I
know there's others that can do it.
right.
I guess I was speaking to everyone, but specifically to Deputy Chief Clifford Wong and to Mrs. Malele. I wanted to make it clear that it is the responsibility of the police department to figure this out. I'll end with this. I was in the room, sitting at the table when this issue came up. And the then chief, I won't mention his name, and a deputy chief that we all know sat there and looked at us and looked at John Burris and Jim Chaney like, well, what's wrong with that? I was sitting at the table when that went down. I witnessed it myself. I said, my God, these are unconstitutional stops. And they looked like, well, what's wrong with that? And one of the deputy chiefs started laughing at Jim Chaney. Jim Chaney stood up, turned red, and let him have it. I witnessed that. So I'm not so sure that it's a matter of fact thing that in the culture of the Oakland Police Department, that unconstitutional stops is awful policing. I'm not convinced of that. So if they want the public to know that it is and they've changed and they want to be able to police themselves, that's an area of improvement that they can focus on. I'm done. Thank you.
Right. Deputy Chief, do you want to respond? Go ahead. Your hand is up.
Yeah, it's kind of I guess multi-part. One, let's just back up to see what Task 34 actually is. Right, the requirements of Task 34 is actually the collection and analysis of the stop data. And that's why they're not monitoring us, because we've been collecting that data at a far greater extent than the state has even required it recently through RIPA. We've collected that for well over 15 years. So when the state actually came online, we had to simplify ours to be able to capture state data. So the capturing of data is in there. That's why they're not monitoring 34. Now, the issues of unconstitutional stops and policing, obviously we find that as a huge problem too, right, if it occurs. And I agree with you. There's no doubt that if we see it, they'll be held accountable. And that's a part of the discipline process and the IA process. That if complaints come in, they'll be thoroughly investigated. And if we find there's some kind of wrongdoing, discrimination, bias, whatever it may be, the discipline will occur and accountability will be held. But that's outside of task 34 in itself. And the data that we do collect, we monitor this kind of data through all of our risk management meetings. So I know Chairman Lilly has attended those. I don't know if any of the other commissioners have, but a lot of times it's not open to the public because it's talking about personnel issues. But the stop data is analyzed every month, depending on for different segments of the police department, to look at who they're stopping, why they're stopping, and the purpose of the stop. Any patterns that arise will be noticed by the chain of command, and that's discussed. So it's not that we don't do any of these things. We look at all these. And then when you're talking about unconstitutional stops at face value, I mean, if you have a specific case, I'd be more than happy to look into it again. But when we receive these complaints, we investigate them. And we discuss them all, and all the information is captured, and they're reviewed by the supervisors before they get submitted. And then as far as that meeting that you sat in on, I'd actually like to know which one it is so I can look into it, because that doesn't sound.
You know, you ask me, I'll name names. Just let you know that I'm always calling it like it is. Don't stretch the truth. Chief Went was the chief. Deputy Chief Figueroa was the deputy chief. In the meeting was John Burris, Jim Chanin, and Reginald Lyles. And I was working for the mayor at the time. And we were just aghast.
How long ago was this?
About a year ago. And then Eberhard came in. No, not a year ago, excuse me.
Yeah.
When she was made a mistake. Slipping
No, it's okay.
That it was when the mayor was in office just before
2014.
Yeah, and so I was there working for her at the time, and this conversation went on like this. Then then they hired Eberhard, right, from Stanford. She came in, and the data was collected, and the data proves it. And so I don't have a specific case that's upsetting me. It's the data. It's the data that shows that at the time, I think that the population of African Americans in Oakland, 22%, 23%, but they were being stopped at about 60 or 70%. And of the 60 or 70% of the stops that were made, only about 30% of that were getting cited or arrested, and et cetera. So that meant 40% were being stopped. So why are you stopping them? If you're not citing them, you're not arresting them. That was the logic, the legal argument that was made. And then it was like, well, what do you mean? What's wrong with that? That's the exchange that I'll never forget. And then I was a part of getting those every 90 days reports that the monitor would give, and I would read there, and there it was right there, constantly over and over. Why can't we do something about stopping people unconstitutionally, letting them go, and they're always in Deep East Oakland and brown and black.
Right.
So that's not a if it happens, it happens, and the raw data proves it. And the people who've come in and studied it have said, this is what you do.
So let me, again, I don't think there's any dispute.
Okay.
You know, there's no dispute about it. It's an issue, it's a problem. We've gone through a few chiefs since then. Some other things have changed and been tightened up. So it's going to be a constant problem and constant monitoring by the police commission, by the IG, by various ad hocs. It's not like it's being put to the side and nobody's saying that it's not still a problem.
Thank you. I feel better about it now.
Yeah, because I don't want you to think I'm dismissing it. It's just that right now, the judge has said, you guys better do something. And when you come in September, you better have addressed certain issues. And you better show me that you got some policies in place and that you are going to be able to get from under sustainable. The specific policies that I want to talk about today are some of the things that we have to go in September and tell the judge, we've addressed them. This is the policy. These are the changes. This is how things are going to get better. And the stop data is not on the list of things to do for the September meeting. It's on a perennial list of things to do for the commission and for the city of Oakland, for the police department. But Mariano, I want to get to you, and then I want to get to the deputy to talk about these policies that we're hoping the judge will eventually say in September, okay, these are good enough. Go ahead, Mariano.
I'm going to defer to Pastor Jackie.
Oh, go ahead, Pastor Jackie.
Thank you, Mariano. And so I think part of the challenge that we have is probably indicative of a challenge we've had overall. And so perhaps what might be helpful is a formal statement that some of the concerns that have been raised will be addressed by the police commission in some capacity if they cannot be addressed in this committee, because the unspoken elephant in the room, and you all know this is what I do, is you have a committee of people who would love to see the police department not under the NSA, but at the same time does not want to engage in action for the sake of doing it if there's not going to be lasting, sustained change that can be measured. Right? And so I think sometimes people don't want to come out and say that because we want to serve, we want it to happen, but I don't think anybody's interested in having them come out only to go back to business as usual. And so even if it's for the sake of just knowing that the issues that come out that are outside of the tasks that have been directed by the judge to address, that there is some kind of plan stated, if not defined, might be helpful in helping us move forward and stay focused.
Okay, and I think that those are valid points, and I guess I did not state it as succinctly and as articulately as you, but that's what I've been saying all since this conversation started. Those issues are not off the table. They are being addressed, will be addressed by the police commission. They will be addressed by the inspector general. There are other ad hocs as well that will address these issues. They will be addressed. It's just that this ad hoc committee is not the one to address that aspect of policing in Oakland. And that's all.
And it's recorded, and that was so all, we got it.
Yeah, that was all I was trying to say. We're not sweeping anything under the rug. We're not saying, hey, you all are good on any of the other things. So there are tons of issues that are being addressed by the police commission itself, and the inspector general has the authority and the mandate to ensure compliance, the OPD's compliance with all of the NSA tasks, not just these remaining ones. So okay. Okay, so I'm glad we got that out of the way. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Pastor Jackie. And Mariano, you're good. You don't need to add anything, Mariano.
No, but I would also just like to just say that if there's an opportunity for this group to address that, if there's an opportunity, because here's a really good opportunity to do this, and let's go ahead and meet the responsibilities that have been asked of us by the judge. But if there's an opportunity, this is the group to do it. I have all the confidence in this group that we can really get in there and talk about that. But thank you for that.
Yeah, and again, this is not the only ad hoc that's going to address NSA tasks. And if we do a standing committee, it will be continuing to address the NSA tasks. And that standing committee, I think, Chair, will last even beyond our maybe beyond even our exit from the NSA. It's a standing committee. It is a standing committee that will live on until it's dissolved. Okay. So thank you all, and I apologize if I wasn't clear in terms of what what we will or will not do. But the commission as a whole, and there are just 3 commissioners on this ad hoc. The commission as a whole has a full agenda to address all of the issues of constitutional policing in Oakland. Okay, so let's see. I think Pastor Jackie, your hand is still up. You're done though? Okay, all right, great. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So Deputy Chief Wong, how about if you go ahead and talk to us about what policies you have ready now and what the plan is?
Okay, well, I think obviously since the meeting this Thursday is canceled, we're going to change the timelines a little bit. But my initial thought was just to move all the group ones that we're going to do this week into the next meeting on June 22nd. It might make for a somewhat long meeting that day, but that would still give us a chance to have a few weeks in between initial presentation, edits, and a second presentation and more edits before the final vote. I'm just afraid that if we pushed everything 2 weeks, we'd end up really tight at the end. As far as the documents, do you want me to project them on the screen? Would that be easier?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
If you can.
Yeah, give me 1 sec. So I'm gonna.
And if we need, we can get Kelly back on, but I hope you can. I hope you are able to.
Do the share. Let me see. Okay, so I'm going to log in on a different computer as well with the screen. Can I share? Yes. Share.
I'll call Kelly.
Oh, I think-
Oh, there you go. Looks like you might have something. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody can see the document?
Yes. Can you make it bigger though on the screen? Can you enlarge the screen? Yeah. Okay.
A little better? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so this is the document that Kelly sent out a few days ago. The initial grouping we have set up that was supposed to be presented this week was our DGOD 22. The ID, Internal Affairs Policy and Procedures, our training bulletin on internal investigations, and then a recusal policy from our Bureau of Investigations. And then group 2 is also a CID or Bureau of Investigations investigative training program, and then the criminal investigations into law enforcement officers. So whether if somebody in our department gets arrested, how we deal with that, and outside agencies as well. Okay, so I'll just start going down through each policy. So this first one is in response to, all these documents actually are in response to the Clarence Dyer recommendations. Okay, so they're not a simple one-for-one, but sometimes the recommendations will be covered in more than one policy, and a policy may cover more than one recommendation. But this one primarily is addressing the idea that we should be aware when there might be a conflict of interest or a recusal issue where, if there's a dating, married, sibling relationship between 2 members of the department, before we do any kind of investigations, we should know ahead of time. So we took a lot of this language from AI 72 in the city, which is the anti-fraternization nepotism policy. So the language is very similar here and there. I'm not going to go through every single line and page because when we get to the actual commission meetings, the person who wrote these will come and do a full presentation. I wasn't fully planning to present these tonight, but having read all of them, I should be able to give you a pretty good understanding of what we have in front of us.
Can you summarize the salient requirements of this one?
Yeah,
they have to disclose within a certain time period. They have to disclose in the relationship.
Right.
And that's just within 30 days or something.
Yeah, so we put that in there for 30 days. So the relationships are listed here. They basically mirror the ones from the city. Basically have, they live together, have close friendships, have a actual relationship, personal, family. Those are all listed here. Some of them are a little bit subjective, like close friendship. I mean, when you work in the same department for, 10, 20 years, are you friends or are you close personal friends? So for those, we have an interpretation where they would have had to do a little more than the average. I know you, so we have lunch together at work. It's going to be, if you're their best man or their children's godfather or, something like that, that would be a closer friendship. This one talks about family, relationship, blood relationships, marriage. So one of the things we definitely put in there is that you cannot supervise somebody you have a relationship with. And if there are two supervisors that work together, that would have to be reported to their upper chain, so they would be aware that's occurring. Make sure there's no conflict. The disclosures happen on a form, and as you said, within 30 days of the inception of the relationship. We did contemplate shorter ones, but because one of the requirements is like a sexual relationship, like a dating one, that could occur and go away and reoccur within shorter periods of time. So we thought 30 days would be a more manageable amount. And so the forms are filled out, they're submitted to our HR. The HR department has it, and they can reference it whenever we do promotions or reassignments, or have any investigations, or if an investigator needs to call them and ask. But what they're not going to do is produce a list to circulate, because obviously there's some confidentiality aspects of it. But they will have the information available so that anybody that needs to look for it can, and they can also evaluate transfers before they occur.
And with respect to the timeline, the 30 days, that is what the city of Oakland permits employees. I mean, that's the city of Oakland. You will note that some of us thought 30 days was entirely too long.
Right.
And that it ought to be something like a week or something, that you almost immediately disclose a close personal relationship. But the city attorney did explain in meetings that that the 30-day time period is what the city sort of goes by.
Right. Initially, we had it longer, but I'm glad you suggested we shorten it, because 30 is better. The 60 was too long. And then right here, it lists penalties, but if it's a policy, it's inherently covered under our policies or our manual rules that you have to abide by all policies. So otherwise, you're subject to discipline.
Excuse me, DC Wong.
Yes.
This is in reference to task 45 or task 5? This
is really a result of the Clarence Dyer recommendations, which primarily came out of task 5 issues.
Task 5, okay. Thank you.
I got some unreadiness on the friendship thing. When you take questions, I'd like to go back to that.
Oh, yeah, let's go back to it. This is a very informal run through. The question here?
Not family relationship, just
sorry,
the friendship, close friendship, non-family, non-romantic relationship within two parties, more than acquainted, who have participated together in non-social event. Wow. I mean, I think it's so broad, it's so vast that you can drive a Mack truck through that. I don't even know if it's even possible. Yeah, 2 years ago, I was real close friends with the guy. I don't see him now. They moved. Do I have to disclose? Now I'm ready to, I promote it and he has an opportunity to come in my unit and I supervise him. Do I have to say that or not? And let's say I didn't do it because I didn't think it was necessary. Can somebody use that as a cudgel to go after a person because they happen to be, politically, oriented different than them, sexually oriented different than them, racially different from them. It just seems like it's so big and possibly unnecessary. I mean, I would want everybody on the police department to be friends. I know they're not, but that's what we want. I mean, if we don't have we have better cooperation when people are friends, at least, and cordial. So I think we're setting ourselves up for something that either cannot be monitored or managed, and it leaves us open for criticism, like we're not being practical. So I don't know how I'm a close friends with the guy doesn't mean I'm going to have favoritism or whatever when I discipline him or supervise him. And I've been in that situation. I mean, I end up supervising at least 3 guys I went to high school with and played basketball with and stuff. So, these things happen in smaller departments and smaller unit and details.
Right. So that particular section was a definitional section to what close friendship was. The actual reporting, the required reporting is going to be for family relationships, business partners, consensual romantic relationships. So you wouldn't necessarily be required to report a friendship just because you're friends with somebody. Right. Like you said, if everybody's friends and everybody's vacations together, we'd have a stack the size of an encyclopedia, right?
Right.
But that definition will come into play during some of the recusals later. Like if you're doing an investigation. So I had the circumstance when I assigned a case to one of my investigators one time. And they just said, oh, we're friends, we worked on a squad together, we have lunch together. I said, okay, is that going to affect your ability to make a fair evaluation of this case? And he said, no. I said, okay, then investigate it. Okay. But then I had another person that came up and he said that he was the best man in his wedding. Their families vacation together frequently, once a year, godparents to each other's kids. And he says he probably would have a difficult time investigating that one. So I reassigned that case. So that's when that relationship would come into play more than actual reporting here. Does that sort of address your concern?
That does help me out a great deal. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Wong, you can move on.
Okay. And this is just a quick look at the form that would be submitted. Okay, this next one is the IAD Policy and Procedure Manual. It says there's formerly 2101. Now we're going to rename it to 2301 because we're redoing it this year. But this policy did go through commission a couple years back. And so there are just some additions to it. The primary additions, unfortunately, I don't think this copy has the highlights in it. That was what the presentation this Thursday was supposed to show, but it's a very long document. The primary sections are a couple things, to document when meetings and presentations occur. What one of the CDC recommendations said was, if whenever we have a major incident or an officer is arrested and we start an investigation, or there's some kind of high profile type investigation, the next business day, the chief and the executive team usually get a briefing. Not always the whole executive team, depending on the confidentiality nature of it, but there would be a briefing that occurs. And that would just happen regularly. But the notes were not necessarily entered into like the chronological log that says this briefing occurred. So in here, we added the language that these briefings will be documented in the chronological log. Another portion is for, I think one of the bigger things is on the report of investigation, at the end of the investigation, if there are any changes, such as an addition of a subject or removal of a subject and change to like a witness, or an addition of a manual rules violation or a removal or change in class, all those would normally occur. They would be documented via like email approvals, but they were not captured in the chronological log. So that is a new requirement that they have to be captured in the chron log, and you have to write about it in the other relevant section of the internal affairs report, right? A lot of times you would see the end result, but you wouldn't see necessarily what changed. So now if we say remove somebody, you would say that this subject officer is now a witness officer, and this is the reason why, and it was approved by so-and-so, and that'd be in the body of the report. So that way the transparency increases and there's more tracking involved. Also, if there's a disagreement in the finding, let's say the investigator has a finding and the chain of command most of the way approves it and agrees with it, but somebody disagrees. Well, rather than sending it back to the investigator and saying change the report, the commander would write an addendum. And that's been the practice where they would just write an addendum and both of those viewpoints would be presented to the chief. But we're just putting that into a policy that the addendum should be written. It was already a well-known thing that everybody did, but now it's actually in black and white in the policy. Yes, sir, go ahead, you have a question?
Yes, so in here, I read somewhere that IED uses the standard of the preponderance of evidence in investigations.
Yes.
Is that outlined, that standard outlined anywhere in here?
I don't know if it's in this policy or it might be in M3, but I can find it. I know we have it written. It's a very, I guess, common standard across all of our internal investigations.
Right. I just would like to maybe take a look at that. I've heard that standard, but I don't, you know, is there a written standard? Is there a California standard? Is there a national standard? I just would like to see that wording, if you can provide that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll look that up for you. So I'm just typing a couple notes here, so I'll get back to you on that. Okay. All right.
And if I may
Sure.
add, Judge Brenda Hartman Forte, did we discuss that standard in CIPRA?
Did we discuss what?
That the use of that standard in CIPRA?
Yes, we did. I believe, yes. I'm 99% certain that it's
Okay.
in the CIPRA policies.
Okay, was it outlined like a little bit longer than just that standard? Because I can look that up. I don't have to have.
I don't think it was really outlined. I think it was, I mean, it was just stated. But I believe it's in the written policies or that Charlotte has reported that that's the standard they use.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Which, yeah. But we can, we can find it, but I know that she's represented that that's a standard that they use. And I can find out exactly where.
Isn't it a civil code standard?
Yeah, that's. I
Civil
would
code for
say,
civil
I'm
code?
not sure the origin of it, but I'm pretty sure that's a very standard level of evidence across all administrative investigations.
Yeah, for civil litigations, for sure.
Yes, it is a standard that is used in some civil cases, as opposed to the highest standard is beyond the proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Then there's a standard of clear and convincing evidence. There's a standard of preponderance of the evidence. And preponderance means just basically a more likely than not standard. We used to describe to the jury, you know, if you got basically a scale and everything, and there's anything that kind of tips the scale one way, then that's a preponderance of the evidence. It's just more likely than, did it happen? Did it more likely than not happen? So it's a fairly it's not a heavy or strict burden to meet. But you use proof beyond a reasonable doubt in terms of criminal convictions.
So that's used on, that could also be used on stops, right? If I'm stopped and I'm convinced that I was stopped because of the color of my skin, and I claim that, and then, you know, Officer A who stopped me has never had any complaints regarding that, so then that preponderance of evidence goes to his side, right? Is that what that means?
It goes to either side. If it's more likely than not that what you allege occurred, then you've met the burden. To the extent it would be your burden to show that the stop was based upon your race.
I see. I'd like to just make a note to flag that and maybe revisit that at some other point, you know, because I like what you mentioned, Judge Brenda, regarding that it's, I don't know if you said a low standard, but it's not, you know, it's a basic standard, right?
It's a basic standard and a very common standard.
Okay.
Yes, it's to the extent that it is a civil standard of proof, then it is it's civil. But during the investigations, those are more civil in nature.
Okay.
You're not necessarily, particularly if there's a complaint like CIPRA is trying to determine if there was a violation, if there was untruthfulness, if there was use of force, excessive force, or whatever, then they're trying to determine that.
Right.
And you know, the standard of proof, and Nikki and anybody else with legal training, feel free. The standard of proof is typically that, preponderance, more likely than not.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Nikki, anything to add for clarification or to restate?
No, it's been way too long since I've been in court, and but I believe what you said is true. I think this is a really common standard of proof for business like this.
Okay, thanks.
We have counsel here. Maybe she has more opinions.
We have the judge here. No, but that said, yeah, it's fairly standard for investigatory thresholds of proof.
Okay. All right, thank you both. Okay.
All right.
DC Long, go ahead.
I'm glad we had a judge online. That helped a lot. Every class I've ever been in for, you know, IA classes, investigative classes for administrative, they've always said that's the standard we use, but they never really talked about where it originated from. So, all right. So those are the main. Oh, there's just a lot. This policy is long. Okay, so I already talked about the changes in the investigative report, right, where we're going to document all substantive changes directly from a recommendation from CDC. The practices are not really new. Those things we pretty much always did, minus the addition of the meetings to the chronological log. But all the other changes have always been approvals by the IAD captain. So you couldn't just downgrade a subject without approval. You couldn't add or remove allegations without IAD approval. Now it's just required that everything is written in the report and also chronologed. So you would have those. See, one more thing is we're also going to retain the final digital copy of the reports. So, you know, we do a lot of track changes when sending through the chain to make corrections. Just at the very end of the process, we keep a copy of that, just in case we have to go back and look for any changes. And also any cases now, for an extra layer of review, if a case involves a possible termination within the range of discipline, and it's either going to be a sustained case or a not sustained case. And I say not sustained as a finding, not non-sustained case. So exonerated unfounders won't be part of this, but not sustained and sustained will also be read by the deputy chief. In the past, the review will go up through the captain if it's a division level and be sent back to the internal affairs division level unit. In these particular cases, when there's that termination level event, it will go to the deputy chief of that bureau first, then to our division level unit. If it comes out of IED, it comes to me because I'm the deputy chief over internal affairs and bureau risk management. So I would read it in addition to just the IED captain. And now that always leads to the question of what happens to the reports that don't rise to that level. They're reviewed by the captain and approved by the captain of internal affairs. And then during our internal audits, they pick random samples of cases to review that are non-sustained cases. Sustained cases always go to our Friday meetings and get presented to the executive team. So those get discussed yet even one more time, even after that extra review. The ones that don't go there will get caught in the random audits. So essentially, this document is mostly, it's very long, but it contains all the roles and responsibilities of everybody in the IAD. Some language was added to it about those topics I just discussed. It'll probably become more evident as we get into the training bulletin because that's more procedural, and this is more like role-based descriptions. Scroll through, see, it's a process.
DC Wong, can I ask while you're scrolling through, just to get more background on updates like this, if we didn't have an oversight situation, would the police department update their policies like this? And do you feel like these updates are good updates? Like, do you feel like as the DC that these are updates that will create change and culture in your department, in your agency?
Well, it's hard to say you're going to change culture using a policy, right? A policy just provides guidelines. It's not really going to change the policy in itself. The policy change comes from the people that are enforcing these and pushing the messaging down. And yes, I think there's good changes because they will add an extra layer of redundancy. They tighten up some areas where things weren't written down. I think one of our biggest pitfalls a lot of times is we do things, but we don't necessarily always write them down. And because we do so much, sometimes you either can't find it, or you can't look it up, or you can't support it. So the extra documentation is definitely a good thing. It does create a little bit of extra overhead as far as effort goes, but it's worth it if in the long run it corrects things falling through the cracks. And this extra level of oversight is definitely necessary. Now, to address your question of whether this would occur without oversight, the policies in the department are intended to be reviewed on a regular basis. Some policies should be reviewed more often than not. And admittedly, some of these policies are a little older than we would like them to be. This is causing us to go a little faster, which is a good thing, I think. But there's a normal review cadence that would occur with policies. We actually talked to the Inspector General's office, and they are interested in going through a lot of our policies. And so that would actually be a great help because then you have an outside entity looking at our policies saying, well, this one should be changed. And then we'll definitely change that one. If they say this policy looks fine, that may be one that we can either bypass or just reissue with minimal change. So that actually will be a great help. Did that answer all your questions? I don't know if I...
Yeah, that's helpful to get some of the back end and how you all are feeling about these changes. It still feels to me that it feels like you think documenting the good work that's happening already is what's happening in this policy. And I think a lot of Oakland community members want shifts and transformation in how you all do work and carry work forward. So I would love to see, in the future, or maybe even in like upcoming updates, that you have ways that the police department's also acknowledging the actual pitfalls of the police department and not just the pitfalls of recording the actions of the police department. And I really do hope that, I know policy is just a written policy or procedure manual, but it is meant to be a tool that management uses, leadership uses to change culture. It really is supposed to have that buy-in. So I really do hope that how you utilize and update these change and how you effectualize these change within your department shows that kind of leadership to encourage, change to follow, because this is a great opportunity to do that.
No, I agree with you. I'm not saying the policy is not usable and will have no effect on the culture, but it is up to us as the leaders of the department to use it to push, right? The policy in itself, it's just a document, right? It's just how you utilize it, it's how you reinforce it, it's how you message it. And I agree with you as well that it's not about documenting the things we're doing, but I think one of the biggest changes is going to be the extra layer of review. That's one of the things that was identified in the investigation that was lacking. There were changes made that nobody knew about, and it went through because there wasn't an extra layer of review. Now, it's as with anything, right? If you create a new procedure, somebody will eventually find a way to circumvent it. That's just the nature of laws, rules, but that just means that we have to keep a closer eye on it and do a better job of watching it. And we're aware of that, right? We have, the law book's this thick, right? But people still commit crime. So if we detect wrongdoing, any kind of misconduct, this will give us an extra way of catching that and to make sure that we hold them accountable.
Pastor Jackie, your hand is up.
I only have a question if we are done. I wanted to go back to the original policy, but if we are not, then I can wait until we go through everything, and then hopefully we'll have a minute to go back because I just need a bit of clarity.
Deputy DC Wong, how much? Is there another policy we're going to go through tonight? We're going to go through both groups tonight.
Yeah, I think the next couple should be a little quicker because the one in the ID policy I covered. This is the training bulletin that covers the investigation, how to do internal investigations in general. The earlier one was specifically for ID, but the ideas are the same.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Pastor Jackie, why don't you go ahead and go back, and then Jose, I'll get to you. Pastor Jackie, what did you want to go back to?
I really don't want to throw us off, but I want to go back to the policy that defined relationships.
Okay.
That was where we started in the beginning. So I pray this doesn't throw the discussion off too much. I just want to be clear because there was a reference to the Dyer-Cohen report, which spoke about adopting a policy that clarified acceptable relationships. So is that what this policy is intended to do, to actually define the relationships that are considered acceptable? And then as it relates to the disclosure period, which I saw on the second page, I believe it made reference to 30 days. And I wanted to know if in fact that disclosure was not made, is there a reference to whatever the discipline policy would be in the actual document? And then I'd just like to know in general, since the goal, I think the title was to strengthen the existing policy, what portions of this actually strengthen that existing policy? Is it simply the 30 days for disclosure, or are there other areas that we should be aware of as well?
So backwards, to strengthen it, it's because before we actually relied on the AI 72, the city policy. Being city employees, we are held to those as well. By introducing it into a general order internally, it actually makes it clearer and easier to enforce for us. Because I know as a young officer, it was always hard for me to understand all the city policies because we don't necessarily have those readily available, but all our general orders were very, I guess, common to us, right? This way, we're bringing in that policy into our department in a format using language that is more readily understandable, easier for the people to follow, and also easier for us to enforce. And that goes to your second to last question is there is a penalty listed right here. It's a performance of duty if you don't follow policy. Anything we have in policy, regardless if it's a general order, training bulletin, whatever it might be, if it's written in policy and you don't follow it, you are subject to our manual rules violations.
Okay, and then in terms of the definitions, the first part of the policy that was intended to define relationships, by virtue of disclosing those definitions, that's meant to be clear about what relationships need to be disclosed in terms of what's considered acceptable.
Right. There's, I guess the way they wrote that recommendation, little hard to, I guess, interpret because they say what is acceptable. I mean, we're not really in a position where we can tell you what relationship is acceptable or not, right? You can have your relationships. But what this defines is which relationships need to be reported and which ones cannot occur while you're working, right? You can marry somebody in the department if you would like, right? We're not going to say you cannot do that, but within the department, you cannot supervise them directly. And that's what we're doing here is to make sure that if we have these kind of relationships, that you don't work for one another, so there's no nepotism, cronyism, favoritism that occurs, and that if an investigation occurs, that you are not going to be investigating somebody that you cannot fairly evaluate or you cannot fairly investigate.
And at this time, disclosure is basically the only measure that you have in order to discover those relationships as it relates to investigations.
You're talking about okay, so the disclosure in the sense that these are the required ones, we would have that on file. Later on, I talk about recusal policies, which is similar, but it's when you come across an actual, when it's time for you to do an investigation and you see all the names of people involved in it, do you have any of these relationships that would make it so you can't either perceived as being unfair or cannot actually be fair? And you have to report that. And that has to be an investigation.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Dorado, I think.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I always think of, in terms of policy, I always think of that famous saying, you know, culture eats policy for lunch. So I say that to say that it was, I liked what Nikki had to say about acknowledging the publicly the pitfalls of OPD. So I think it would be important. My suggestion would be that OPD, when it goes into the hearing, it publicly acknowledges the pitfalls that it's addressing in these policy changes. It's a matter of putting into words in the policy to keep people honest and have consequences if they're not. And so there's any number of examples of that recently. So I would suggest that those pitfalls, those cracks, as you put it, DC Wong, be acknowledged in your presentation. This is how you're not only addressing those pitfalls and those cracks, but also these are sincere and honest efforts to change the culture of the police department so that in fact it protects and serves honestly and constitutionally. So it was more of not a question, but more of a statement and a suggestion to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
But Twee, if there's ever anything you want to add or jump in on, please just feel free to go ahead.
Thank you so much. Jose and Nikki, what your comments around the culture component of it, I do want to address it and also address the larger framework with vis-a-vis the ad hoc. So it has been very clear on several occasions, and you know, our judge Brenda Harbin-Forte, along with our chair, observed the proceeding by the court. The court, Judge Orrick, specifically asked several times over, how do you change the culture of the police department. And he was very keen on it, asking various individuals, including Chief Allison, along with the mayor, et cetera, of how do you change the culture of the department. He also addressed on a few occasions, including when in his response to our chair after she made her comment around, and let me just show you really quickly. So this portion is his response to our commission chair. I appreciate that the commission was not in existence then and is in existence now, and I'm encouraged by that fact. And I'm figuring out how to best ensure that oversight that you discuss and I now have continues in the way that is effective as possible. So as you think about the ad hoc, there seems to be two questions that are very particular, I think, to the commission. And I say this because of looking downstream for September's court filing and what the commission through the ad hoc wants to say to the court. So one is, how do you change culture of the police department? And two, how do you continue oversight when the court oversight is over, it's done, right? So those two questions are very, very specific to this commission and particularly tasked by this NSA ad hoc. Our chair has made it a point that with the policy changes that Deputy Chief Wong has just presented, to have it be addressed as a commission as a whole and not have any ad hoc specifically for it, even this ad hoc for it, because of an intention, and please, Chair, please feel free to speak in as lean in, but we very specifically and purposely agendized it for the full commission to address and approve those policies that we could consider them the Clarence Dyer report policies. They came from recommendations of the Clarence Dyer report. And to then leave you as an ad hoc the space to not necessarily address what the Clarence Dyer report wants of us, but to speak to that larger big picture question of culture change and transition of oversight if and when that happens. So so that's one thing. The other is there is, as you know, the court has already said we would like to hear from the city and plaintiffs' counsel on September 26th. That's the next hearing, and that we would have a filing very similar to what we did in April. So the question is, what would the commission want to say? And the ad hoc very much, this ad hoc could really guide what the commission should say. So Mariano, I know in the first round, as the commission was putting the ad hoc, we were doing the memo at the same time. This is an opportunity now that you know ahead of time, with a few months in between, of what would you like to say to the court, recommend that the commission say to the court. Quite frankly, we were slated to schedule a report from this ad hoc at our Thursday, June 8th meeting. We were ready to go on that, but it turned out with vacation and COVID-related illness, et cetera, we weren't able to get a quorum. And so unfortunately, we had to cancel. So you may, as an ad hoc, also have to let us know what to present to the full commission at the June 22nd meeting or the July meeting. And what is to be presented is the question, what do you believe your charge should be? This was the last time we left. Remember, right after the CMC, we met with each other and we asked that question, what do you want your charge as an ad hoc to be? The chair has freed you from reviewing each of the policies like that so that you can look at big picture. And so what do you want this ad hoc charge to be, focus to be in the next few months?
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone? And Reggie, I'll get to you. DC Wong, you said there are 2 more policies that you think would be pretty quick, or more than that?
It's 3 of them. But
3 of them, and we may
pretty
have
short.
to. Okay, let me go to Reggie, and we are at 7:15 now, and our meeting is to end at 7:30. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Reggie.
I try to be, I try to be
Yeah,
concise.
DC Wong, you can keep your screen up and ready to go if they're going to be quick.
Okay. let me
Go
see.
ahead. Okay.
I don't think, not to pour water on this, I don't think culture change will have any great impact on that as an ad hoc committee. And quite frankly, I don't think OPD's management has great impact on cultural change. Culture change in OPD, I believe, is driven by the Oakland Police Union and the rank and file. Policies we develop, and then our job is critique policy and try to focus on a justice and a balance and all of that. But you know, those of us who've been around here a long time, and know the ins and outs of this city and how OPD relates to this city historically. You know, cultural change has to come from the people who are doing the law enforcement. And the folks who have the most influence on that locker room is not Deputy Chief whomever or Chief whomever, who they never see, who they never relate to, who is, you know, they're driving a desk. I drive a car. I'm out in these streets. So for the ad hoc to have a comment to Judge Orrick and say to Judge Orrick, oh, we're satisfied the culture has changed, I'm not going to take part in that. I will not take part in that because I know it would be disingenuous. The fact is this: if we're going to change the way Oakland Police Department polices folks in Deep East Oakland, in Fruitvale, in West Oakland, and up on Skyline Boulevard, you got to talk to the guys who actually do it. And they got to feel that they want to change. What the new chief comes in, or the new set of deputy chiefs say, you know, they don't see those guys. And when someone is disciplined, you know, oftentimes the discipline doesn't affect the person who actually did the action. We don't know about it. If it's a civil judgment made, it doesn't come out of their pocket or whatever. It's just very insulated. And so if they ask us, how do we make cultural change? You got to get the union and the folks to say, we want to change. And so if we don't say that, I actually respected the chief when he said to Judge Orrick in my reading that I don't think a policy changes culture. And it doesn't. So let's not think that we're doing that. We're changing policy. And if we don't assign a discipline to the violation of these policies, then we don't have any effect. All we're doing is being icing on the cake. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Reggie. I think that there's discipline included, but let us, and one of the things too, I think the discipline matrix is going to need to be looked at altogether, because we know it's outdated, but that's another thing for the police commission to look at. For example, the violation of body-worn camera right now for the discipline matrix is not even termination. So there are some things that will need to be looked at. Let's do this. Let's try to go run through these other policies quickly, DC Wong, and then it'll be 7:30 by then for sure. And Reggie, if you're done, if you want to take your hand down, that will be good. So DC Wong, let's go through the other policies and summarize them.
Okay. So the rest of them are going to be about training and recusal. So this is one of the recusal forms that's included in every internal investigation. It basically just asks you if you have one of those relationships that we talked about earlier, you have to check it off. If you believe you should be recused, you go to your supervisor, they'll make a determination whether there's either an actual conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest, and they will reassign the case. Internal Affairs will use the same form for their criminal cases if it involves any member of the department. And what we've also added in now is to include the same recusal for the reviewers of the case. So this is forms completely new. Because before it used to be the investigator and you just pass it off to review. But you know, it is important to see if the reviewer also has some sort of recusal issue. So this has been added. This is the CID recusal policy, which is very similar to the ID recusal policy, and it uses the same language from that first one we saw about relationships. So I won't spend too much time on that one. And then this last policy is the investigation of department members and outside sworn personnel when there's a criminal matter. In a nutshell, if one of our members gets arrested, notification goes to Internal Affairs and to our Criminal Investigations Division. If it's a city, in the city of Oakland, our criminal investigations will do the criminal side, IED does the admin side. If it's outside the city in another agency, our CID will liaise with them to keep track of their case. And when if they get charged or not charged, whatever it might be, they'll report back, and we still do our internal admin investigation. So that's what this policy guides. And there's a notification that's sent out to members of the city government leaders, including the commission chair. And yeah, and earlier I think I already covered the part about doing the briefings on these to the chief the next business day and having those documented in the case and in the cron log. Yeah. And for whatever reason, maybe I went too fast, but there's also a training policy in here for CID. All that is a cross training between the Criminal Investigations Division and the Internal Affairs Investigation. Because when you have a case that has both, there are legal requirements that cannot be violated. So like an internal investigation, we can force you to give us an interview. But you know, in criminal cases, you can't do that. You have the right not to incriminate yourself. So there's this mutual understanding needs to occur between the investigators. So the training regimen is going to include language that allows the CID investigators to get IED training and IED trainers to, investigators to learn more about the criminal. That way, the two investigations sync up better. And that is a result of one of the CDC requirements where they were potentially stepping on each other's toes, and you run the risk of losing evidence or violating their police bill of rights, basically their union rights. So that's it. Any questions about any of that?
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anyone? Nikki?
Yeah, I think what Reginald named was really helpful, right? If we're talking about transformative change and not just transactional change. And I think DC Wong, you were kind of alluding to like, this feels like transactional change to you as well. What does feel like transformative change for you? And I actually don't know the answer, but like, are we allowed to engage the union in as an ad hoc council? Twee mentioned there's two things that we need to consider, which is how do you change culture and how do you change policies or continue oversight when the court oversight is over? And I think what I'm hearing as the want from, community members like Mariano and Jose and myself is we want to see, and Pastor Jackie, is we want to see transformational change, not just transactional change. And this, I feel like this exercise has all been about transactional.
Yeah, our chair at the court proceeding made it very clear in her comment that she often finds herself chasing the priorities of the court monitor. And in this case with CDC in terms of policy changes, and we still have to review it. The department still has to make those changes. We, the commission, still have to approve it, etc. That said, there are some things that the chair said, there are other priorities that are really critical to the community that is not a priority of the court monitor. Deacon, I noticed you changed your title, Deacon Reggie Lyles, in terms of like the racial disparity with regards to stops, right? And the NSA in our memo, we identified things like whistleblower types of scenarios, taking a look at the revisiting the discipline matrix that speaks to the accountability component, and that does speak to the union component of it. That there's discussion around mental health issues that need to be really seriously addressed around culture change, and also a distributive leadership approach that the commission has identified for the court. Those are the things that the court actually and the court monitor are not addressing, right? And that's why our chair was saying, and yet these are the things that are important to the community, right? So so that's your challenge, and I hand it back to you in terms of how do you want to approach this? Do you want it to be this transactional type of work with the ad hoc of reviewing policies? And I've already said that our chair has relieved you of that responsibility by making the commission do it, so you can focus on some of these big transformational change conversations.
Okay. Anyone else? Any thoughts or comments in the next minute, the next 3 minutes at 7:27? And and I do hope that we don't. It's not a binary choice, it's not either or. There is continuing work going on. For example, we have a racial profiling ad hoc that is addressing issues and things. So there are, and again, the commission as a whole. Jose?
Yeah, just a real quick question to Tui. I got 2 of the 3 that you mentioned, whistleblowers and distributive leadership approach. What was the middle one?
There's I'm going by memory of the NSA memo. Mental health, distributive leadership, the discipline matrix, whistleblower.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. But there were, yeah.
I
there
just
were-
have
there were-
a question for Tui.
Yes.
Can you maybe send us a written what you described as freed us and gave us the right to do? I'm just not really clear, but I don't want to take time today. I mean tonight. If you can maybe just send us a little paragraph
Okay.
on that. I just want to be clear on what we're being tasked to do.
Chair Hartman Forte, you green light to be able to kind of frame it for.
Yeah, if you want to say, send it to me and send it to the ad hoc commissioner members, and then we'll make sure it gets out to the rest of the ad hoc members.
Will do.
And you meant chair of the ad hoc, or did you mean commission chair? Were you?
Ad hoc chair.
Okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, send it to the 3 commissioners and let us take a gander at it. And since the chair is one of the 3 commissioners.
And just to
And
be
then-
clear, just to be clear in terms of writing sometimes, is I'm not in any way suggesting that this is the ad hoc that says there's culture change and therefore report it to the court. It's quite the opposite. It's to say we need the culture change, and what would it take to make it happen, right? So,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's going to have to go to the commission, the full commission, for final decision on what gets sent to the court. on anything that is reported to the court.
Okay.
Reggie,
Yeah, I'm in the camp where if we get rid of this consent to NSA agreement, and seems like it's going to happen. I don't see that as a good thing. I know a lot of people who live in Oakland thinks it's a wonderful thing. Oh, it's time to get it. It costs a lot of money. But we had 23 years of no movement at all. Absolutely no movement at all. Lot of moving around the deck chairs, but no cultural change. And no one can, who is honest and stays abreast on who gets shot, who gets indicted, who gets beaten up, who lies on police reports, who loses evidence, who gets shot in the back running away, who gets stopped, and no justification of why they got stopped, and then let go, put in the back of the police car, handcuffed, set in the back of the police car on a hot day, then taken out handcuffed, and now you can go on your way. These are the things that over the 45 years in Oakland happened ED and happens S. And so the burden of changing that, ad hoc can't do that. That has to be, I know we're tasked with that, but I just want to go on record saying, I'm going to be genuine about this. We need a change within the heartbeat of the police department. I don't know if that's hiring people differently. I know it's training people differently, but let me just say a minute about the training. We need to lower that, because that's always the thing. Oh, we just need more training. California has the best police training in the nation. PORAC is the best, the very best. So it's not a matter of training, it's the will, it's the want to do it. And they say, we're not gonna do it. Well, wait a minute, you're on the consent decree. We don't care. Well, the city is paying a lot of money. We don't care. We want a raise. We don't care. That's what we've been getting. So when we get together, this community, and make a pushback, then you don't like police. I love police. I was one. I love them. I love constitutional policing. That other stuff they do, I have nothing. I have no respect for that. It's against my religion, and I mean that sincerely.
yeah,
And so I think we have people who are in places and and have responsibilities that just want to further on the status quo. We need a dramatic change, and it has to come from the inside. And I mean no insult to anyone here present, but I'm just honest with you.
I think, I agree with you. And one of the things I like about the ad hocs, and particularly the members on here, is that you're going to tell it like it is. And that's what we want to hear from you. At the same time, we have John Burge told the judge, this is a very, very different department than it was when we started this. So there's been some change. It's not ideal. And the other recognition has been that you can't police every incident. There will always be some things. Even the judge recognized that, the department's never going to be perfect. We're going to try to do what we can and everything to assure ourselves that the changes that have been made will continue. But there's no perfect police department. And John, I think John and Jim Channon acknowledged that this is a different department. So and there's a lot to be done. The training has been improved. There's more diversity among the academies. There are more women coming in. There's different leadership, and the newer people are coming in with a different attitude. Some of the older ones are are weeding themselves out, but it's still a problem. It's no question that there's a problem. And so what are we doing? It's not on the ad hoc to decide what that actual change is going to be. It's going to take a lot of work on the part of a lot of other people. And certainly the leadership, we will have a new chief. We don't know what that chief is going to bring in. There's going to be a learning curve whenever we get somebody else in place. We don't know what's, we don't know what, there's going to be a challenge. But the other thing too is that the flip side is after 20 something years of oversight, maybe it is time to stop spending the money on that and invest that money into some things that can make some changes in this community. The millions and millions of dollars that have been given to this monitor and given to Jim Channon, and by the way, John Burr stopped billing years and years ago. Jim Channon is the only attorney who's making money off continued oversight. So where do we put the rest of that money and stuff? Maybe we invested in programs and services for the poor people here in Oakland. What do we do about homelessness? Where are we spending money on that? What are we doing about jobs for people? That money that the monitor is making, that Jim Channon is making, can certainly be put to better use. So it's kind of six in one hand, half a dozen in the other on the one hand, but the federal oversight has brought some improvements. And even, again, John and Jim acknowledge that, but it's not perfect. And 20 years from now, there may still be some issues, but we need to try to put as much in place as we possibly can to reduce the number of those issues and to change the culture to the extent that we can. And Chairman Lele has something to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, I echo what you're saying, but I also want to add that part of the issue for me is, as you all know, we've done, I think, around 22 policies since I became chair, and they were all directed by the monitor. Not one of them deals with what I signed up for the commission. It does not deal with racial profiling. In the time that I've been here, the meat and potatoes issues that I wanted to address are the time that we have is being taken by someone else's directive. And that team does not have any diversity on it, and is not concerned with what I'm concerned with, and that is the racial profiling issue. And in order for us to have the time to not spend on somebody else's priorities, somebody else's policies, that's why I have also agreed that it is time for that to end so that we can dig into the real stuff. As you all noted, 34 is not, the judge has decided that's done. They think that's over. So why would we continue to say, tell us what is important when we know what's important? Because they've already shown that this is not important. And these policies on here, I've looked through every single one of them. Not one of them would prevent what happened from happening again. Not one. So I don't know if we, with our minds, should devote that much time to, how much time in relationship, all of that stuff. But what we should be doing is coming together and be like, what about what the community wants to see, what we want to see, and not focus on other people's priorities. So that's why I didn't like the idea of, just redlining policies that aren't even necessarily going to make that kind of change, but to focus on how can we help make culture change. And for my part, what I have seen as somebody who attends a lot of IAD meetings is the leadership gap between a sergeant and a lieutenant, or actually a sergeant and a lieutenant, and then a captain. So just, when we talk about distributed leadership, when a sergeant presents a case and the way they're thinking about it, the way they're discussing it, apparently the training for leadership for a sergeant is like, you are patrol today, and then on Monday, you're sergeant. And so things like that, the gap is so much bigger than when you hear like the deputy chiefs talking about the cases versus the sergeant, is night and day. So I think that there is some room in that area of like, what is leadership training for people well below deputy chief and captain, like to hone in on their ability to be leaders in the department. And that's all I'll say. Thank you.
And Pastor Jackie.
Well, you're over time, so I won't belabor the sentiments that have already been echoed that I agree with. But what I will say is what I have heard twice, I believe. So correct me if I'm wrong, is that in addition to the transactional work of looking at the policy and analyzing that, which actually setting policy, defining behavior is a component of culture change. You have to set the standard and articulate the value and the expectation of behavior in order to be able to have accountability, right? To begin the culture change. And so I don't see this work as futile. But what I have heard twice, I just want to make sure, is that there is also an invitation extended for us to begin the work of thinking about the other components of transformational culture change that are not directed to this policy. So if that's the invitation that's being extended, I've unmuted to accept.
Yes.
Because I accept that challenge. And so whenever that work will begin, I'm all on board because that is what I came for. But I don't want to negate the fact that establishing policy is a foundational part of changing any culture, but also understanding that unless it comes from the ground up, unless there is acceptance, unless there is buy-in, and policy is not buy-in, unless there is buy-in, then we are just kind of setting a mandate. And the goal is to create a movement. And so if that's what I heard from Tweet, if that's what I've heard from our chair, you can count me in. I accept that challenge.
Good. Very good. Thank you. That's exactly what you heard. And what you also will hear and should hear is that you all are very, very important to the movement, so to speak. It's very, very important that you hang in there and that you stay in. Things are going to happen. John Burris wants the federal oversight to end. Shannon wants it to continue. Again, he's making money. But we need to do these things, and the police commission was established to address all of these issues. But we cannot do it. We haven't. Our time has been on the Clarence Dyer report. And I will say one thing: had the review process that's being implemented now in terms of documenting changes, and if you're going to change somebody from a witness or to a subject or something like that, had those policies been in effect, we might have the police department might have caught the issue with Chong early on, because when that report was changed and modified, had there been some kind of tracking and everything in place, that would have been brought to the forefront. That would have prevented what happened, and you wouldn't have been able to get to a chief's meeting where some people know that there's some stuff missing, but others don't. And the chief said he did not know that there was anything missing. So had you had that background and everything already, and there had been a policy in place, that would have prevented what started the darn stone rolling down the hill. Just disaster, just craziness that we're all still feeling. I got Mariano and Jose. I don't know who was first, but Mariano and Jose have comments.
I think that regardless of what our report is going to be or our presentation at the next court hearing, September 26th, there should be a line covering what Chair Malele just covered. That, we are doing this because you asked us to do this, but this is what we need to do and what we want to do. And just state that, whether it's, they're going to say, okay, continue or not, they need to know how we feel about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Jose.
Yeah, just real quick, I got to push back on the attack on Jim Shannon. I don't think he's doing it for the money, nor do I think that the monitor is doing it for the money. And let me just state clearly, the things that were done, the whole issue with the firing of the chief, that was just a repeat of everything that's happened prior. So culture change is absolutely key. So whatever it takes to do that needs to be done. And I agree with you. Yeah, if we'd have had that policy, it would have caught this and that. But the real comment on how far we have to go and how far we haven't come is the fact that we still had the cover up happen, even after 20 some odd years of the NSA. And that can't be sugar coated. And so I just wanted to say that clearly.
I gotta jump in and
We'll
say,
agree to
OPD
disagree on
hasn't-
Shannon, because Shannon was in the mayor's ear saying that he had to be fired that day. And that
Okay,
was
let's
an
be clear
absolute
about this.
complete misrepresentation.
OPD
anyway,
has not brought
so-
forth any of these cases. All of these horrendous cases do not come from OPD's rank and file and management wanting to right itself. It always comes from the outside. It always comes from some attorney or some family who's been devastated by the death of their loved one or something to come in and make the synergy, the energy around, then they look at it. When OPD becomes the kind of agency that says, we did this wrong and we're changing it and we want you to know about it, full disclosure, I will feel better about that. What they've shown us for the 23 years is that if we can hide it, we will. If we can lie about it, we will. If we won't mention it, we will. Now, when you get people like me who stand up and say, hey, this is not right, and other people in the city say this is not right, then they want to act like, well, you're not treating us well. That's the problem. The consent decree can go away. Looks like it is going to go away. My fear is OPD becomes OPD of 1978 again in a matter of 24 months. That's what's frightening to me. Why do you say that, Reggie? Because I've seen it happen over and over and over and over again. And I will not lie to myself. I will not lie to myself. And those of us who say, oh, this time it'll be different, stop it.
Well, the pessimist in me says it's not going to end in September.
Well, again, I'm a Christian and I'm an eternal optimist, but I'm telling you,
keeping it going.
OPD challenges my faith when it comes to this. The only thing that changed,
It's not going to happen.
Huey
Too many
Newton
people
couldn't
want to
change.
continue. So anyway, and there are people who are making money who wanted to continue. So
that is wrong.
Those are the facts.
Chairman,
John
that is
Burris
wrong.
is not
You
making
shouldn't
money
say that.
on it. John Burris wants it over. John knows
shouldn't.
more about
Listen.
corrupt police departments than anybody in the state.
You wrong for
or
that.
in this
You shouldn't say
country.
that. You owe him an apology.
Anyway, so should we try to debate? We should probably decide on another meeting date.
I think that'd be an excellent use of channeling our passion on this issue.
Oh yes, this is very, very passionate. I like the passion. I like the candor.
It's good.
It's all good. We can agree. We can disagree without being disagreeable. The let me see here. What do we want to our next meeting? Do we want to try to meet in a week? Next week, our next meeting's on the 22nd. Do we want to try to meet one day next week, one evening next week?
Can someone rehearse again, just for my clarity, what is it that is expected of us on the 22nd? What is expected to go before or be a part of the full commission's meeting?
We're just going to provide a status report. The ad hoc committee will provide a status report.
Okay.
And you could be present or not. And I will just give basically a report out. But the real focus
on
is
where we
gonna be
are in terms of these two tasks as what was presented today by Deputy Chief.
Yes, yeah, and he's going to
I think we could stand to meet before the 22nd.
Yes, and he's going to present those. He's going to present those tasks to the revisions to the police commission. The other thing that we can talk about are the thing that we can meet about are what recommendations we have for changing the culture of OPD. What can we do? What's going to be important to actually change the culture? The judge seemed pessimistic that the culture may never change, but what can we recommend to change the culture? So we can talk about those kinds of philosophical things. How do we engage? How do we engage the police union if we can? What are the barriers to that? What can we do in terms of more community involvement? And what can we do? What can the police commission itself be doing? What can the IG be doing? I don't I don't know that we've had recommendations for policy changes directly from the Inspector General yet. Or actually any audits of any IAD investigations from the Inspector General yet. And so we still have that. Even the Bay case, that was a very controversial investigation. The IAG has not given us a final report on what happened in the Bay case, which
So,
many
Judge
people
Brenda,
found very outrageous. Yes.
So we are opening it up to other, not only focusing on 5 and 45.
That's what we mentioned. We talked today about the
Okay.
fact that what the judge is going to want to hear is what can we do to change the policy? To the extent that we can make some recommendations to the police commission, we can discuss that. It's all within 5 and 45 in the sense that this is what we're going to need to do to get from under the ad hoc. And I don't think I'm to get from under the NSA. And I don't believe that we really need to do anything with the others, the two and the other things that are still on the list. I don't think our ad hoc needs to look at any of those things. But one of the things that we can certainly discuss, which is what I thought all of you were asking about, is what you can do. What can we recommend in terms of policy, in terms of changing the culture at OPD? What can we do? Is it going to be an impossible task? Maybe it is. Maybe it's just left best to the entire commission to have those discussions. But as an ad hoc, I think some preliminary discussions would be fine, because in terms of what we're to do for the judge on terms of these policies, I think once we get these policies approved, that is something that the judge specifically told OPD to do. And one of the things that that our ad hoc is to make sure happens, and the commission makes sure happens, that we get some policies and procedures in place that address the issues raised by the CDC report, by the Clarence Dyer report. And once we've done that, then we can also address the broader issues that I think the chair is also saying we address about culture change. Chairman Laley is saying that we address about culture change. So I don't know that we necessarily have to approve as an ad hoc, Madam Chair, Chairman Laley, whether we need to approve as an ad hoc, whether we need to pass on these proposed policies, or whether they will just go to the full commission for the full commission to discuss and pass on the policies. Do we need to give some preliminary recommendations, do you know, Madam Chair, on these policies?
We don't have to, but we absolutely can. I think that would, bringing it, once the commission sees it and knows that the ad hoc has some input and made some recommendations, that would just strengthen the policy. So if people want to make suggestions, add, any kind of edits or something like that, I think we should welcome that. Absolutely.
So I think what we would need to do is to have the chair, Deputy Chief Wong, send all of us the policies, the draft policies that you have now, that and we'll see if we think that they need tweaking in any way, and see if we have any suggestions. So maybe you can send those to us and then let us meet. Today is Tuesday. Should we meet next Tuesday or next Wednesday? Tuesday the 13th or Wednesday the 14th? And I'm not sure when Jesse's always good to have at these meetings. He tends to crystallize issues.
Calendar shows that he should be back by then.
I'm sorry.
Tuesday is great for me.
13.
I'm sorry.
Jesse Shea should be back by 13-14. I can't say whether he'll be available for the ad hoc, but he's He's out of country and he should be back by then.
Until what day?
He should be back the 13th and 14th.
By the 13th or 14th?
Yes.
Okay. The,
The 13th is preferable for me. Tuesdays are better.
Lieutenant Kalanja and I will both be in public safety on 13th.
and I can't do the 16th. I can't, the 15th is not good for me. Thursday, the 15th is not good for me. Unless we do it,
I could do the 14th. The 13th would be preferable, but the 14th is doable. If
Yeah, I
that's a date that most people could do.
I could do the 14th also.
I can't
I'm
do
sorry.
Wednesday.
Chair, what did you say you can't do? I'm sorry. Who is not available on the 14th, Wednesday?
Mariano.
Mariano. What about if can we do it in the middle of the day, like a lunchtime meeting or something?
On Wednesdays, I watch my granddaughter all day.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. How about
Can she join the meeting? Can she be a part of our group?
Oh, she has an opinion. She has an opinion.
How
We
old
would
is she,
love it.
Mariano? How old is she?
2.
Oh, we need
Yeah,
that.
She'll be
Yeah, she
need
has
her.
some opinion.
she'll be 2 on Juneteenth. She was born
Oh.
June the 19th.
Oh,
I
wow.
love it. I love it.
Deputy
The,
Chief, are you all available during the day on that Tuesday, or is public safety in the evening or all day?
Public safety is usually in the evening. Let me check the start time.
It starts what time?
I gotta double check. Usually that's in the evening, but
Because what if we do like a 12:15, 1 o'clock or something meeting on Wednesday the 13th, on Tuesday the 13th? Madam Chair? Malele, are you?
I have a 1 o'clock that goes till 2:30, but I could do it before that.
What if we say 11:30 on the 13th?
I can.
I can do that.
Yeah.
I really doubt Jesse can though.
Nikki,
I can come for part of it. Just,
you can do that?
I can do part of it, maybe like 20 minutes.
Okay, and what time did we say, 11:30?
Yeah.
11:30 NSA Ad Hoc. You can only do it for about 20 minutes, Nikki?
Yeah.
Should we do 11 o'clock then? What
What's
if
a
we
better
say,
time for you, Nikki?
Yeah, 11 would be much better.
11 it is.
Yeah,
who
11.
cannot, okay, who cannot do it? Okay, we're good. 11 a.m. NSA Ad Hoc. And we'll have Kelly send send around the Zoom notice. And we will have DC Wong send to everybody the current copy, and DC Wong, in terms of the vetting, these this draft has gone through. It's gone through your basically NSA committee, internal committees and everything, and staff. So we will go, so we'll go through and just read a read through, and we will see what we are suggesting be changed and try to get that. That'll be in enough time for things to change, any revisions to be made before the 22nd. And we will have to send the materials out, the syllabus materials, my God. We'll have to send out the agenda material no later than Monday, the 19th. So we have time. Okay, and Twee, you didn't say anything. So we got, it's going once, going twice. It is Tuesday, the 13th at 11 a.m. for our next meeting, and we hope Jesse's there. Thank you so very much. And I think Jesse was going to send in his comments on the written policies anyway, or written comments on the policies. So I think he's been keeping up with them. Okay, Thank you all. Thank you for the passion.
Thank
You guys don't know how much you energize me. All right, take care. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Okay, all right. Take care. Thanks, DC Wong.
You're
And
welcome.
okay, and Twee, let's see. I think that I don't think we have anything to. Are you done, DC Wong?
I just have one quick question. I was going to do a reply all with that attachment that
Yes.
Kelly sent out. Would
I
that be
think
okay?
that
Be a brown
yes,
bubble.
yes. If everybody is listed,
You're okay.
She's-
Ad hoc doesn't follow the Brown rule.
Okay.
So it's
I'll
not-
do a
But
reply
make
all.
sure it's just three commissioners, the three commissioners on the ad hoc.
Oh, just the 3 commissioners?
Yeah.
Okay, because they're
Harbin Forte, Malele, and Shay.
okay, because all Lyles and all of them were on there too.
Yeah, but they're
Not-
not official.
not yet. Yeah,
Okay.
don't send it to them yet. They're gonna send it. We said they'd send it to us, right? Twee, send it to the 3 commissioners.
Okay,
No,
so
this is the policy side. This is the DC Wong's, the CDC policies.
So that's what he's asking for. So
Yeah,
DC
that's what
Wong,
we send to all the.
he goes to,
the ad hoc.
yeah.
Yeah.
Your draft policies go to the big, everybody on the ad hoc, Mariano, everybody
Mhm.
okay, let
who's
me,
on the ad hoc.
And
And that
like-
includes the 3 commissioners on there.
and just
Twee will
make
be
sure
sending something.
separately.
okay, so I'm
Yeah.
going to send a reply all to the ad hoc email that Kelly just sent.
Okay, and just would you make sure that it only includes 3 commissioners? The
I
3,
think that's all.
I
is it-
assume that, but I just want to make sure so you don't
What do you
violate.
mean? 3
The
commissioners
NSA,
plus the
the
other.
three-
So Kelly's on there.
NSA ad hoc, the only 3 commissioners should be Malele, Harbin Forte, and Shay.
Yes, and then it's Dorado, Contreras.
Yeah, all the
and-
rest of them, they're not commissioners, yeah.
Yeah.
So it goes to all of them. It
and
goes
then
to everybody.
Connor and Garcia are also on there. Is that okay?
Yeah, council's okay. Mhm.
Okay, then I will send it right now.
Thank you.
And that's
go.
all of that's all of the ones that you, all of them. That's
Yes.
all of the policies that you went through tonight.
Same packet I was using and same one Kelly sent out. So I just forwarded her attachment from the other email.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay,
Right, well, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
all right, you too now, take care. All righty. And
Judge,
so,
stay on. I'll
yeah.
stay on, Judge.
Okay, then, so what you. Let's see here, let me end
Just the 2 of us.
recording. Yeah, let me end recording.
Yes.